here is you cannot become a person of deep thought until you become a person of a pure mind. That's the thing I want to talk to you about in the next 10 or so minutes. What does it mean to have a pure mind? And what does Allah define it as? The word lub, which is the root, the source word in al-bab, is the word lub. Lub in Arabic means, aqlun salih. It means a good mind, khalisun min ash-shawa'ib, that's the key word. It's free from vanities. A sound mind that is free from vanities. And this is, if you don't remember anything from this talk, this is what I'd like you to remember. A sound mind is one that is free from, what was that word again? Vanity. Vanity. Useless thought. Useless knowledge. And we're living in a society, and in times, it's not even just in the United States, it's all over the world, where there's what you can call information overload. We're all Googled out. Okay, we have too much information. And information is being bombarded to us, left, right, and center, wherever you go. Messages are being pumped at you in advertising, when you turn the radio on, when you're flipping channels, when you're going through websites, banner ads, this, that, the other. Sports statistics, characters in movies, how many seasons of what show, and what happened to that guy, and what they are, from video games to movies to news to everything else. There's tons and tons and tons of information is being bombarded at you, right? And you can't even so much as drink a bottle of Snapple. You take the cap off, and what do you get? A useless fact on the back, right? Constantly you're being exposed to information, and you get exposed to so much information that you can't tell the difference between useful and useless information anymore. You become desensitized. You have so much information that you can't tell what's useful and what's useless, because it's all just a big mess in your head. But the other thing that happens is, when you really come across some really knowledgeable, beneficial information, something that's really going to help you in life, you don't appreciate it. You put it on the shelf along with all the other junk in your head. You don't really see what the point of it is. I'll give you an example of that. You know what's been said about Surah Yusuf in the Quran? How Allah introduces it? How does Allah praise the story of Yusuf? What does He call it? It's a famous thing. We're telling you what? We're narrating on to you, even if you know the rough translation. The best narrative. This is the best story. Allah calls the story of Yusuf alayhi salam the best story. You can chit chat later. Can you turn it on? Okay, fine, don't close the door. I'll stop talking. Fine. Trying to make them feel bad. They don't even feel bad. Anyway, the worst is when you're giving a lecture and the guy in the front row has sent a phone call, which of course he has to have a 50-cent phone ring for some reason. First he lets it go for half the song, and then, when everybody head is going like this, then he picks it up and says, yeah, I can't talk right now, I'm in a lecture. Oh, what happened? Oh, really? And then they go for a whole conversation with him. So, be considerate to your audience. Anyway, so be considerate to a speaker. It takes a lot to speak, and you guys get distracted easily. Imagine the speaker. Right? They see a distracted, like, where am I? What am I telling you? Okay. So what was I saying again? Aha, useless and useful information. Very good. Okay. So the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah says it's the best possible story. I was teaching it at Sunday school one time, and you know what happened? One of the kids goes, no, it's not. I'm like, why? I'm not going to say, that's kufr, astaghfirullah, check your aqidah. He's in third grade. He said, no, it's not. I said, why isn't it? He goes, Dragon Ball Z is so much better. And he's telling me the whole history, how he went from Saiyan to Super Saiyan, and his hair went from blonde to yellow to green to whatever, right? And he came back to life in the dragon, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool, man. That is pretty interesting. But Allah says what? That the story of Yusuf is the best story. But it might be hard to convince a child of that. They might be more impressed with their video, the story, the plot in their video game, or the story they're watching in a cartoon show, right? Or a movie they saw. They thought that was an awesome storyline. So many twists and turns. So how do you explain that to a child, or how do you convince them even? You don't have to actually. Allah at the end of that, so remember how I said the lessons in the beginning and then the answer or reviews at the end? What happens at the end of Surah Yusuf? Allah says, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قِصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ. In their stories there are lessons, profound lessons, but for who? Not for everyone. لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. For the people of what? What is ulul albab? Pure minds that are free from what? Vanity. kid's head is filled with vanities. And until his mind becomes pure, he's not going to see that this is the best story. Right? The fact that he doesn't see it as the best story is a proof that his mind hasn't been what? Hasn't been cleansed yet. It's dirty, it's full of garbage, fluff. You know? And this is stuff like, mashallah, if you think it's hard to memorize Quran or it's hard to remember a lot of Islamic knowledge and you think that's impressive, it's not. Because you guys know so much about an actor and how many babies they adopted, or what color they dyed their hair in what year, and you know so much about what happened in what episode in what show. You know so much about the sports statistics, some of you guys, right? Free throw averages and touchdown averages and how many playoff victories and how many years. We have all this useless, absolutely worthless knowledge. And it's there to make small talk. In the end, the only reason we have this information is to make small talk with each other. Sometimes this useless knowledge is something it's something useful in and of itself, but we get obsessed with it, like cars or technology or the new app or whatever it may be, But our heads are filled with so much of this useless stuff. It's a testimony that it could have been filled with useful stuff too. We just didn't want it to. We thought this was a better use of our mind. Allah gave us such an amazing thing, and it's being used for such junk. Right? The mind is an incredible thing. In a hadith, the Prophet says, مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ خَلْقًا أَكْرَمَ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْعَقْلِ. Allah didn't create anything more noble than the intellect. That's what he says in the hadith. It's an amazing, this mind of ours is an amazing thing. And imagine how sad it is how it's being put to use. I went to this kid's house one time, and he was playing, I think it was Final Fantasy 9, 10. What's the new one out, You guys gotta keep up. Anyway, so they play Final Fantasy. This is a role-playing game. It's obviously a Japanese game, and this kid's got like menu, sub-menu, category, subcategory, weapon, sub-weapon, which bullets to use, which monster gets hit with which weapon, and he's going through walkthroughs which are like 50 pages long on a website, right? It's like a whole course he's taking on playing a video game. And I was remembering, man, in the early 1800s when I was playing video games, this is what a video game was. Bong. This was a video game. Now it's gotten so complicated. So much knowledge, useless knowledge, is necessary to even entertain yourself, right? Even with cartoons back in the early part of the last century, it was a cat running after a mouse. That was a cartoon. Now you got like Yu Yu Hakusho and all these complicated shows with these complicated cards. I used to teach at an Islamic school. These kids had cards. You ever seen those? They start with Pokemon cards and those other kinds of cards. Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? Those things. And of course, they all have a different shaitan on them. This kid's got that, and these kids, they watch this, they read this stuff, and they get lost in that world of these shows, right? So these two kids get into a fight, and he takes out one of his cards and he throws it at the other guy. And you know why he threw it at him? Because he was thinking, out of that card, a monster is going to come out and chop his head off. Right? That's what he really started believing it. He got messed up in the head, this kid. Throwing a card at another guy, And now it's funny, but it's also very disturbing. That this mythology and these weird, twisted, demonic, satanic beliefs have now become entertainment. Kids are just watching cartoons. Right? But you guys are above that. Obviously, this audience, most of it is older than that. What's your big problem? Your big problem is the entertainment industry, music industry. And within that, the thing that's destroying your character, for you even the minor problem is useful information. You know what the major problem for your age is? Overexposure to shamelessness. Shamelessness in how people talk to you, what kinds of things you hear in school, the kinds of language people use, vulgarity, foul language, disgusting things, the kinds of social networks you're involved in, and the kinds of pictures your friends post on them. These are the kinds of things, and movies, and the kinds of things that you're exposed to in movies constantly. It's not even once in a while. Every day, constantly, you're exposed to this stuff, and you know what happens to you? And at first, maybe you felt a little disturbed when you saw something shameless, vulgar. You heard some foul language. But you know what happens over time? You get used to it. That's the first thing that happens. And then what happens over time? You don't feel so bad when you use it yourself. And then what happens over time? You don't feel so bad when you do the very thing you were watching. You're tempted to do it yourself. Right? You're going from being a decent human being down to becoming an animal. That's really what's happening. An animal has no control over what it says. An animal has no control over what it does. It feels an instinct, it follows. That's it. That's an animal. But Allah made us human beings. And you know what's the difference between human beings and an animal? It's the intellect. And in Arabic, the word intellect is aql, which literally means a means of restraint and control. If you can't control yourself, you don't even have intellect. And if you don't have intellect, you're not even a human. You're just an animal walking around in human form. That's all you are. Right? So Allah says, you want to become a person of knowledge? Become a person of pure mind. So you retain your humanity. I tell you, like my teacher says all the time, most people on the face of this earth, especially in high school, are animals walking around under human garb. This is where you lose your humanity. When you reach this age, you lose your humanity. Brothers lose respect. Men lose respect for women. Women lose respect for themselves. You lose respect for society, your parents, the elders, wisdom. You lose respect for everything. You become what I like to call the whatever culture. Everything you hear, you know what your first response is? Whatever. How was the speech? Whatever. What do you say? Whatever. What do you think? Whatever. Your whole life becomes whatever. You're apathetic to everything. And you know why that is? It's a sign. That's the last thing I want to talk about, and I'm done, inshallah ta'ala. That's a sign of the ultimate problem. The ultimate problem isn't shamelessness. The ultimate problem is not useful information. Those are minor problems compared to the ultimate problem. You know what the ultimate problem is? Ego. That's the ultimate problem. You're obsessed with who? Yourself. You can't get over yourself. You're obsessed with how you look. You're obsessed with what people say about you. You're so egotistical, you become, that if somebody says something really powerful and amazing, you can't even, it's below your ego to show emotion. So you know what you have to say? Whatever. Even if you feel something on the inside, say, yeah, okay, it doesn't bother me. It's not talking about me. You're too hard. You're too, tough. You're full of too much pride to show that this has effect on you. But the people of real knowledge, when they heard knowledge, you know what used to happen to them? They used to cry their heart out. This is described in the Quran, and they fall on their face in sajda. يَخِرُّونَ لِلْأَذْقَانِ يَبْكُونَ. They fall on their faces and they're crying. But you get filled, you get so inflated with your ego. Your ego comes from how you look, what your status is, what people say about you, how popular you are, how good you think you look, how smart you think you are, how much money you think you have, what kind of car your parents drive or you start driving soon. Right? These are just symbols of ego, and you get inflated. And by the way, what was the ultimate problem of shaitan? How many haram things did he do? So he gets to be called shaitan. Right? Well, how many people did he kill or murder? Or what kind of crimes did he do that he gets to be called shaitan? Yeah, ego. He had an ego problem. Why him? What's it? It's dust, clay, man. Fire right here. He said whatever. Basically. That's what he said. Make sajda, whatever. Right? That's the ultimate ego problem. So whose footsteps are we following? Allah says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And guess what? That's the biggest problem of our youth today. Yourself.
How about I don't care?
That's very well said. I don't see this apathy, this distancing yourself from emotion, responsibility, distancing yourself from actually even your own self. This is actually a deeply spiritual problem that is faced by our youth. And when that happens, it's easy for you to turn to an animal. That's really what's happening. And you aren't being told that enough. You're not being told that enough. Nobody's there to tell you, listen, your friends are turning you from a noble human being into nothing more than an ornate animal. That's what they're turning you into. So you need to change your company. You're not being told that enough. And so the people around you are your destruction. So, and that's really what I wanted to get at in the end, inshallah. There's three major problems I brought to your attention. One was useless knowledge. That's what I tried to bring to your attention. The second was overexposure to what? Shamelessness in speech, in company, in things you see, and being desensitized to that. And the third is basically the root of all of this, which is a problem of ego. That's really these three things. Now, this is supposed to be a verse on the Quran. So the last thing I want to tell you, remember I said the people of a pure mind, Allah defines them at the end of Al-Quran. So what does He tell us? Basically, He tells us two things they do. الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض. And that's it. He just tells us two things about these people that you need to know at the heart of it. He said these are people who remember Allah all the time. When you remember Allah all the time, you are remembering someone who's greater than yourself. Right? And the more you remember his greatness, the more it reminds you of what? How pathetic who is you are. It keeps your ego in check. And the more egotistical you become, the more it's a sign of the fact that you don't what? Don't remember Allah. If you were really remembering Allah all the time, you wouldn't have time to be obsessed with your ego. You'd be obsessed with Allah and His magnificent power in creation. You'd be humbled by it all the time. So the first solution to a person with a pure mind is they remember Allah. And then anything that takes them away from remembering Allah, they see that as an enemy. So it's, if your friends take you away from remembering Allah, if it's your laptop that takes you away from remembering Allah, if it's your iPhone that takes you away, I have an iPhone, it's okay. But it's, right? iPod, fine. iPod Touch that takes you away from remembering Allah. If it's your PS3, if it's Grand Theft Auto 57, whatever, right? If that takes you away from remembering Allah, then that's what's turning you into an animal. And actually more like a zombie when you're playing those video games, right? Allah describes the heedless as cattle. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. They're like cattle, they're even worse. Look at a kid playing video games. Don't tell me they don't look like cattle. That's all they're doing. And Allah compares them to cattle because cattle has no idea what's going on around it. You know that? A cow has no idea what's up. A car could pass by on the highway, won't even look up. Now watch somebody who's playing video games. There could be a fire in the house. That's all that's going on. Turn into cattle, even worse. Even worse. Even worse, because the cattle, at least it's naturally that way. You were given reflexes. You were made aware. It became worse than subhanAllah. So I mean, I don't want to give you a complicated academic lecture. I just wanted to bring forth concerns that I see are the primary concerns for youth. Inshallah ta'ala. I just wanted to share with you a heart-to-heart. I don't claim that I'm above these problems. I probably had similar or worse problems when I was your age, but nobody was there to tell me. Nobody was going to say, man, you're messed up. You need to become human. Stop being an animal. Really. When you use a lot of cuss language, don't think you're all hardcore because you can curse. I can curse better than you. But the fact that I hold myself back, you know what that means? I'm more human than you are. That's what that means. And you're less, because you can't control what? You can't control your tongue. So may Allah Azza wa Jalla make all of you decent human beings. May Allah Azza wa Jalla help you protect your humanity and make you good to your families and obedient to your parents. And Allah Azza wa Jalla make you people who actually care and don't take an apathetic, egotistical approach to everything in life. And Allah Azza wa Jalla make you identify your real priorities in life, especially when it comes to avoiding all forms of shamelessness. And secondly, taking care of your parents and being respectful to them. So I'd like to share with you. Assalamu alaikum.